I know nostalgia can be addictive, but even that couldn't save the Robocop franchise's disastrous third entry, Robocop 3. I wouldn't say it was for the lack of trying, but there was something fundamentally wrong with the whole idea. The real secret behind the success of the first two films was the R-rated violence and dark, grim setting. But the 1988 cartoon and expanding toy line prompted the makers to opt for a PG-13 film for the third one. Now, even though it was strongly marketed as a film for all age groups, almost everyone discarded the film that went on to provide the weakest earnings in the history of the franchise. It ruined the director's career, and I regard this as a failed attempt with a lot of potential because it did have a decent cast and some inspired ideas that couldn't quite come together. But the movie didn't have to be this way. Frank Miller's Robocop Last Stand is an 8-issue comic series that has the perfect story that the film could have been. In this video, I'll take you on a gripping journey across the entire storyline, and I'll also add the movie events for context so that you can see the difference for yourself. Sometimes the best-suited individuals don't get the opportunity, and that's the classic case of Frank Miller, who's a known die-hard fan of the original Robocop. His idea to explore the dystopian future further could have been the perfect script for both Robocop 2 and Robocop 3, especially the latter, but all we have is a comic series instead. I love how Robocop Last Stand sets the tone almost immediately in the opening panel of the first issue. We see a massacre with corpses suggesting violent deaths, and Robocop is framed as the one responsible. The controlled media spreads the narrative even though the female journalist is reluctant to go ahead with the blatant lies, and the news celebrates a new breed of policemen who are apparently keeping the city safe. The lies are exposed to the readers almost immediately because we see the real face of this new force in the city. They interrogate a hooker on the streets and threaten her with mutilation if she refuses to share information on Robocop, and they even plan to take her into their van to force themselves on her. However, soon comes the entry that I've been waiting for, as the men inside the van hear a loud thud outside. Yep, it's Robocop to the rescue, and he makes quick work of the corrupt men and helps the woman escape freely. The scene then cuts away to a woman in her car, and clearly, she's looking for Robocop. She wonders if he has changed his frequency or disguised himself, and we soon realize that she is no normal woman as she takes down a couple of scavengers on a motorbike almost effortlessly. She uses an interesting tool, a high-frequency sound that rattles the scavengers and leaves them helpless on the street. Meanwhile, Robocop is in his secret lair and remembers his traumatic past, including the death of his partner, Ann Lewis, as he basks in his solitude. Outside, the propaganda continues, with promises of a crime-free, drug-free city and 1 million job opportunities. An ongoing demolition program is about to render several people homeless, and a woman confronts an official regarding this. She remarks about how the corruption is losing millions and still holding up Liberty Heights, and she even comments about how the corporation and their Japanese buddies are broke. However, even this statement is used against the woman on the charges of conspiracy, and she's taken down by the ruthless cops. But it's Robocop in the scene one more time, and this time he takes on the cops and the official in charge. They do have a secret weapon, though, in the form of a large mechanized two-legged tank, but Robocop is able to destroy the mecha threat. Fans will know that the mecha threat is actually the ED-209. As the word reaches the heads of the corporation, they wonder how to get rid of the problem because they are only 5 days away from a financial disaster, and Robocop is a major thorn in their side. They want to demolish Cadillac Heights and remove the tenants who are led by the protester Bertha, and arresting her is the first step. Meanwhile, Robocop heads back to his lair, only to find the woman from earlier waiting for him there. She tracked down his power source since it was the only source of electricity as the entire region was blacked out. She introduces herself as Marie Lacasse and reveals that it has been made illegal to make another of Robocop's kind. In fact, the corporation couldn't produce more of the same because Alex Murphy was indeed one of a kind and nobody else could survive a total body prosthesis. But now, Robocop is out to destroy the people who created him in the first place, and she asks why he really hates them that much. He answers that he hates his present condition, and he never asked them to be rebuilt this way. He also warns Marie to stay away because a close proximity with him is a life risk. But Marie is not here to go away so easily. If you remember the events of Robocop 3, you'll realize how much the film butchered Frank Miller's vision in the opening scenes. For instance, the movie follows the journey of OCP into bankruptcy and corruption, but it does waste some time in setting the tone for Robocop joining the resistance. It's only after the death of his partner, Ann Lewis, that he's able to join the rebels with the help of Nick O'Halloran, a young resident of Cadillac Heights who is skilled with computers. In the movie, it's Robocop who asks the resistance to summon an OPC engineer, Marie Lazarus, who worked on him earlier. I think that Marie voluntarily seeking out Robocop is a much better narrative, which is why the first issue of the comic series is so very thrilling. In the movie, she's reportedly unhappy with the way OCP has become and joins the resistance. She reprograms the fourth directive, which made him incapable of hurting senior OCP executives earlier.
You call me Robocop.
Back to the comic book narrative. The fake information peddling continues, and the anchors are asked to read out a piece about how the terrorist Robocop has killed 14 people in a playground, and the woman anchor has now had enough of it. But even the slightest of dissent gets her taken away, and the male anchor continues with more of the rhetoric. I am shocked with the further details of the deranged society, as the narrative shows what the naughty kids go through in the name of psychological treatment. The attitude adjustment clinic uses unethical methods like shock therapy, and they have a machine that can alter the whole personality and memory of an individual. The protesting woman from earlier, Bertha, is seen tied down, and the officials at the corporation are planning a sinister experiment on her. Robocop jumps to her help one more time, but this time he's helped by the tech-savvy Marie. He uses her hacks and gets help from her reprogrammed ED-209 as they rain down hell on the corporation's guards and executives. Realizing the seriousness of the resistance, a decision is taken to summon the Japanese cyborg Otomo, even though it has never been used in densely populated areas before. I can tell that Robocop is about to endure his biggest challenge, but for now, the job is done. Also, Robocop is currently running only at 67% efficiency, and he needs a lot of upgrades to keep up. Luckily, he does have Marie's technological prowess by his side. However, Bertha and Marie get into an argument over how Robocop is being used as a defender of helpless people, and Marie seems to be crushing over him, which baffles Bertha. She's keen to provide Robocop with companionship, something that Bertha thinks is not the smartest move. Back at OCP, the preparations are in full swing as they fire people left and right to get the finances in order. Initially, it's Dr. Fax who gets the attitude adjustment clinic running, but later, even she is fired, which obviously doesn't make her happy. OCP is barely surviving with so many employees gone, and Robocop as a rebel fighter is only making it worse for them. They desperately need Cadillac Heights demolished, and the senior executive feels that the future of the privatization of government rests on how they handle the situation here. Mr. Kanemitsu is the only hope, as the Otomo, who is fiercely loyal to him, is asked to eliminate Robocop. The sequence of events is broken by a rather strange incident, where a fired employee, Mr. Bazette, forces his way into the premises by threatening to blow himself up, and he has strapped himself with multiple explosives. This is the first major test for Otomo, who passes with flying colors. I love how they make Otomo look here, with a hulking and muscular build. You know, someone who looks like he can actually take down Robocop. He snaps the arms of the disgruntled employee and deals with the threat within seconds, so clearly he is efficient as well. Dr. Fax gets an opportunity to pitch in, claiming that she knows the mind of Robocop and offers to help Otomo get to him. She has a really smart piece of advice for Otomo. She asks him to use Robocop's anger against him because he gets somewhat stupid when he's angry. Also, she informs Otomo that the easiest way to pull Robocop out of his hiding is to put innocent people in serious danger, especially children. I don't think the movie even stands a chance in terms of the portrayal of Otomo. The ninja androids actually look comical, whereas the comic book version has such a commanding and intimidating presence. Also, Frank Miller doesn't waste too much time dwelling on the corrupt OCP official McDaggett and makes Dr. Fax the primary villain if you discount Otomo as an android. In Robocop Last Stand, Otomo starts off by triggering a massive fire, and once again, the dystopian nature of the city and the governance baffles me. The firemen are ordered to control only a segment of the spreading fire, because some people could not afford fire insurance, and the loss of lives mean nothing for the officials. A protesting firewoman, Varley, is fired on the spot, but by now, Robocop has entered the scene. He helps out, along with other firemen who still have a heart that's not sold out to the OCP for their selfish purposes. However, this gets Robocop cornered because Otomo has laid out the perfect trap. He is piloting an attack helicopter, and as Robocop looks for cover, the ground forces of OCP cover every exit. Luckily, one of his former cop buddies is there to help, and he flees in a car with one of the survivors from the fire, a little girl. The forces chase the car, but Robocop is far too good a driver and easily maneuvers through trouble. For a moment, I had my heart in my mouth when I saw Otomo standing right there in front, firing at the car, but Robocop drives straight through him. What's really alarming here is to see how little the impact troubles Otomo, who barely has a scratch. But it does buy Murphy enough time to drive into the sewer tunnels underground. Back at OCP headquarters, a senior official is furious about the failure. He wants to write to Mr. Kanemitsu about the failure of Otomo and fires Dr. Fax again. But then comes a shocking turn of events as Otomo walks in and shoots the official dead. Dr. Fax kills another, and it becomes quite clear to me that she will be the one in charge as she orders the security head Epstein to do a thorough cleanup of the site. Back in the tunnels, Robocop is severely damaged at only 23% efficiency, and he can walk no further. Meanwhile, at Bertha's bar and kitchen, everyone is worried about Murphy. Marie's ED-209 is reportedly looking for him, but that's hardly any consolation. The OCP forces cause some trouble at her bar, but Bertha is a tough one, and she fights back with her friends and allies, forcing them to leave for now. But how long are they really safe without Robocop around to protect them? Just then, Robocop pops up from a manhole in the ground, and Bertha and her friends take him in. He looks in very bad shape, and one of his arms has come off, so they must tend to him immediately. It doesn't help that the OCP forces have promised to come back for revenge, and time is running out fast. I swear, the thrill of this comic series is unmatched, and it's so cinematic that I keep wondering why it didn't become the cinema we deserved. But anyway, coming back to the story, Marie and the others try their best to get Murphy back on his feet. He even needs a new heart, and a lot of parts need to be fixed immediately. Meanwhile, there's a chilling panel where Otomo can be seen practicing on a dummy Robocop, and his punches are powerful enough to dismantle and destroy all that metal. If only Robocop 3 had a villain so genuinely intimidating. Also, the fact that they have a great character like Bertha killed in the movie makes no sense to me. She is the face of the resistance, and you'll see how important her role is in the final part of the comic series. Moreover, the movie doesn't show the police force disbanded, and they're only disillusioned after the truth is revealed by Marie. The comic series has a far more dystopian look, with the terrifying OCP forces ruling over everything. The next bit of the comic series, especially the 5th issue, can be a bit confusing if you're not really used to comic book narratives. Firstly, Robocop is fixed to some extent, but something goes wrong with his wirings in the brain. I mean, it was almost inevitable given how much the likes of Marie were making do with whatever they had at their disposal to replace the damaged parts. Before he can properly get a hold of himself, tragedy strikes big time, and a clever OCP plan gets Robocop captured. It's a delightful time for Dr. Fax, who's also enjoying a satisfying physical relationship with Otomo, who happens to be playing by her rules so far, and Murphy is carried to the OCP quarters to be dismantled. The fake and controlled media narrative broadcasts this as great news for the city, but the ones left behind like Bertha and her fellow dissidents are now hopeless. The worst part in all of this is the tragic death of Marie, who gets killed in the process after half her face is blown off. It's a terrible moment for Murphy as he watches helplessly one more time as his dear partner dies. But all is not over yet, even as Robocop is about to be dismantled. As it turns out, Marie has been even smarter than I had assumed so far. She had a backup plan arranged for such a scenario the whole time, and the OCP technological experts are stunned when they see that their system is getting an override. They watch in shock as Robocop starts to replicate and goes after every sector in their database. This is the result of complex programming arranged by Marie, and now she takes over the entire system. Even Dr. Fax is helpless, and Marie's consciousness takes her hostage with the help of a rejuvenated Robocop. This consciousness then tries to comfort Murphy and promises that he would never have to be alone again. And she takes pride in making the new Robocop, who is more than a broken-down antique. I am awestruck by this new version of Robocop, complete with his jetpack, and maybe now he does have a chance against Otomo, if it comes to that. But Dr. Fax is not someone who gives up so easily. She forces one of the technicians to crash the entire database of OCP, which would be years of work gone in a flash. So she means business. She makes him crash the entire database, but when he warns that he'll have to complain about this to the higher officials, she shoots him dead. I really like how ruthless of a villain Dr. Fax is in the comic series, and together with Otomo, she is a serious threat to the future of Detroit City. The final part of the comic series has a dramatic build-up as Bertha and the citizens assemble, hoping against hope that serious military action will not be used against them for the demolition drive. But we all know how OCP works, and you can soon see inbound aircraft, one of them manned by Otomo. They're ready to blow the whole region to bits, but the new Robocop has a few handy upgrades, including the mighty jetpack. He springs into action, and he takes down the aerial threat single-handedly. The combat sequences here are artwork perfectly executed, and you can see that even Otomo now has trouble in matching up to the upgraded version of Murphy. Dr. Fax is dealt with in the most satisfactory way when Robocop finally gets his hands on her, but the fight with Otomo refuses to be over. He keeps coming back even after Murphy destroys him, and finally there's a massive explosion that seemingly blows everything to bits. From the ruins, Robocop emerges unhurt, but the city will need a serious revamp in order to become the Detroit of old times. Also, the end of the OCP threat for now doesn't necessarily mean that the city has gotten rid of all the evil elements. The scavengers find enough guns and ammunition from the ruins to arm themselves to the teeth. They paint the walls with "Scavengers Run Detroit," and the citizens are terrified by their violent ways. It's yet another mission for Robocop, even though Bertha warns him that it's not a job for one man to deal with so many heavily armed opponents. The consciousness of Marie that now seems to have a physical manifestation as well agrees to this, but Robocop is duty-bound and heads out regardless. Meanwhile, efforts are made to get the former police force together again. The fired cops are informed that Murphy is taking the fight to the scavengers, and it's a moment of unity for the city as they all get together, citizens and former cops, to help Robocop in this uneven fight. What follows next is a dream moment for those who like action-packed comics. Guns go off and the body count rises, and you get to see how potent and powerful Robocop has become. I'm a fan of the new Wolverine-style claws that help him dismantle Otomo on multiple occasions. But the fight does leave him in pretty bad shape once again, as he sustains too much bullet damage. Even the fight against Otomo leaves him with some powerful blows, but Marie's genius turns out to be the turning point one more time. She has managed to reprogram the robots that were formerly used by OCP, and now these heavily armored robots fight against the scavengers. Eventually, it's a happy ending, as the scavengers are mostly killed or arrested. The city needs some serious restructuring, as Bertha rightly points out, because they can no longer rely on big corporations and robots to get the job done for them. Even Murphy agrees that the human way is the way forward, and thus we have a new dream for Detroit, where the formerly disbanded police force is back and they work to appoint judges and lawyers for an effective justice system. The final panel of the comic series is an emotional moment as a kid stands by the same writing on the wall, which previously read "Scavengers Run Detroit." Only this time, the word scavengers has been struck off and it reads "Citizens Run Detroit." Isn't that what all this fighting was all about in the first place? Say what you will, but Frank Miller knows how to tell a story, and this is better than the failed third movie of the franchise in every way you can imagine. The movie ending pales in comparison, because what we see there is a generous side of the Konomitsu Corporation when their CEO comes and pays his respects to Robocop once the Otomo threat is dealt with. The whole scavengers threat is missing in the movie, and it almost makes things too easy for Robocop. Did you ever see a genuine threat for Robocop in the movie, where he was about to get dismantled as we've seen in the comic books? I wish I got the chance to go through Frank Miller's original script, because it would have been one hell of a movie. And you know, it's a great lesson for the big production houses that the popular franchises need to be handled with care, preferably under the direction of someone who is a fan and understands the true essence of the series. Now when I think back, I realize that Robocop 3 could have been handled so much better. What if the new director didn't go for a softer and gentler cyborg cop? And what if they retained the satirical nature of the narrative? I know it's impossible to match the badass vibe of Peter Weller as Robocop, but Robert Burke had tough metal boots to fill. Though he wasn't really bad, and it was just the story that didn't have enough to back him up. The generic villains, the comical fights, and the forceful ninja edition didn't work out at all, and the end result was a recipe for disaster that shook the franchise. I wish the makers followed the vision of someone like Frank Miller, and it's evident from the comic series that it could have made for a memorable entry in the franchise. So let me know in the comments below what you think of the whole comic book series, and also share your thoughts on what else could have made the third film watchable.